everybody. Welcome to Learn with PARQA. We're here on our next episode, diving into a topic that is critical for staffing and recruiting firms investing in their tech stack, which is nothing other than talking about ATS implementations. So in this episode specifically, we're going to talk about why so many ATS implementations go sideways, key pitfalls that firms encounter, how to avoid those, and ultimately set yourself up for success. Joining me, of course, is our VP of Sales, Travis Webb, who has seen, in his 20 years spent in staffing, has seen firsthand what works and what doesn't when it comes to rolling out a new ATS or related technology stack. So, Travis, let's dive into question number one. Let's kind of start with the elephant in the room. Why do so many ATS implementations go off the rails?
Well, we're going to keep this to about 15 minutes today, so we're going to only hit a few of these, right? This is a topic that, as you mentioned, I've got a lot of experience with, so we could talk for a while. But I think number one, lack of clear business requirements. So when you think about it, a lot of companies get to a point where they say, hey, I need a new software, I want a new software, but really defining those requirements, understanding, I'd say from all aspects of the organization, right? Like, are your recruiters and salespeople struggling? They want AI and efficiency. How does that affect operations? How does that affect finance? There's all these different departments that all work on the same software. So making sure that you have the right requirements, ultimately to choose the right software to implement is key. Kind of expanding on that a little bit, like poor stakeholder alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the utopian world, everybody would be holding hands and singing Kumbaya, right? We know that doesn't happen. You're always going to have at least one detractor, but to the best of your ability, that stakeholder alignment, making sure that you have a general consensus, everybody's bought in, because it is as we're going to talk about as we get a little further in here, but it is a cumbersome process, and you want to make sure that everybody is up for it and is on board. Number three, and we've been dealing with this quite a bit lately, but understanding the complexity of data migrations. As you think about kind of with all of the new pricing models, your data is gold. Understanding that it isn't 9 times out of 10, it's not just a simple export a CSV, import a CSV. So when you think about that, understanding that that is a very important part of the process, it is your business, it is your database, and it's something that needs to be addressed in the beginning and understand some of those things. I know we'll talk a little bit more on that in detail here in a minute. I'd say from fourth point, change management and training, right? Like change is hard. Huge. I don't care what anybody tells you, no matter what it is in life, change is not easy when you're used to using the same system, when you're used to doing things a certain way, and all of a sudden your company comes in and says, hey, by the way, here's our new software, and you're going to do things a new way, right? There's a lot of reluctance. So that change management, and then the training piece too, right? I've been part of implementations, not necessarily software, but even like phone systems and things like that, where you show up the next day and there's a new phone sitting on your desk, and there's a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with instructions on both sides. And it's like, hey, have fun, right? And for those of us in staffing and recruiting, dialing for dollars, the phone is your friend, right? So being able to use that, things like that. And then last but not least, I would say choosing the wrong implementation partner, or even to take that a next step, is not choosing one at all or trying to do it yourself, right? Like implementation partners, they know the pitfalls. They've got that experience. They've seen the mistakes that other customers have made. So having that right implementation partner, some of it's internal with the software that you buy. Some of them is external partners like a PARQA. We focus on the Bullhorn and Salesforce ecosystems, but we have that experience from using the systems, implementing the systems, understanding where those gotchas are at, and being able to help walk through that. So really making sure you have the right partner. Don't go at it alone. Don't try to do your own data migration. You will end up a lot of times causing yourself major headaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And so let's talk about how to do it the right way then. If a staffing firm's about to implement a new ATS, like what are the absolute rock bottom must-haves to ensure success?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, define success early, right? What does success look like? I go back to our marketing days, right? Like really understanding what the end goal is, having it defined, clear objectives that you want to get to, making sure that you have that first and foremost. is going to make it a much better experience.
Yeah.
When I think about it after that, stakeholder involvement. So we talked about earlier, you have sales, you have recruiting, you have operations, you have finance. You need to have a stakeholder from each one of those areas that's heavily involved in the process. I go back to like the like software development now, and everybody does agile versus waterfall, right? Because you don't want to get all the way to the end and realize you had a problem in operations in month one of your implementation and you didn't fix it, right? So making sure that everybody's involved along the way, there's lots of check-ins, and you have that buy-in from the team. We talk data, understanding your data strategy. What are you bringing over? What are you not bringing over? What's good data? What's bad data? One thing I highly recommend is cleaning your data before you bring it over to your new system, right? So the ability to clean it. There's a lot of options out there right now for data cleansing, things like that. Yeah. And then also too, from a data side, making sure there's plenty of testing that goes involved, right? Because you don't want to think everything's good. You show up on day one, you turn the system on, and your data's not there, or it's missing a lot of fields. That can be very painful. We talked about like change management and training. So I just think training and adoption is key, right? So you have your stakeholders, but understanding your teams, maybe even getting them involved from a training standpoint of how, once you go live with that system, how do you make sure that there is adequate training in place? Adoption strategies, like you think about that, there's nothing worse than going out and spending a few $1,000,000. If you're on the large end, they're spending however many amount of dollars on the small to medium business side of things to bring in a new system to have your team not adopt it, right? So adoption should not be an issue. It shouldn't even be on the table, like, of people not adopting it. So making sure you give the proper training, you get the adoption. I've seen gamification. I've seen all kind of things used here recently to kind of help with that adoption side of it. And then last but not least, it's working with the right partner, right? Do your research, understand who you're working with. Have they worked with that system? Do they specialize in that, or do they try to implement every system under the sun? Understand their background, right? Did they work in your industry? Do they specialize in it? Like, there's so many things out there. There's a lot of people that call themselves implementation partners, but they implement all across the spectrum, right? Like, who's specific to your industry, who focuses on what you do, knows your business, once again, knows those pitfalls, knows what to look for, understands your day-to-day challenges as you go through that change, and is able to help you out. So making sure you have the right partner that's not only there for the implementation, but it's going to be there long-term. I think that's important too, to make sure you have somebody that, can either, I think from our standpoint, right, we do implementations. We also do implementation advisory, right? So for companies who maybe the software vendor is doing the implementation, we ride along on their behalf because we have the expertise of doing those implementations. And once again, we understand the gotchas and the pitfalls. We can help them from their standpoint, make sure they get that going. And then we're there afterwards, right? For whether it's ongoing managed services, things like that. So a partner that can be with you throughout that whole journey from beginning until after and post implementation.
Yeah, mapping the whole thing back to business objectives. Absolutely. Okay, so the last little section here, let's talk about a little case study of ours, our tale of two implementations, if you will. One of our clients who just implemented a new ATS that went very well. So Travis, talk a little bit about those two stories.
Yep. So we are going to not name names. We're not going to be specific here, right? Yeah. But I think of, we have clients that we've ridden along. We've done implementation advisory. We've helped them through the process. They went through the 9 to 12 months of implementation. We were able to help them in all sorts of different areas, whether it was understanding how to get their business requirements built out and make sure that they were ready to go when they launched, whether it's helping advise on how to build out an internal team to go along to make sure there's long-term success there, things like that. We've seen that be very successful. On the other hand, I talk to people all the time, and I talk to folks who didn't do that, right? And they've tried to take shortcuts. We don't need this, we don't need that. And 12 months in, there is no end in sight for their implementation. They have a lot of roadblocks. They've got a lot of just obstacles that working with the right partner would have helped them avoid. Yep. And would have them in a much better spot. So once again, not to be specific with anybody, but I see this across the board. It's not an uncommon thing, right? When we talk about making sure you have that right partner or a partner It's super important because these are complex systems. I know, particularly in our industry, like staffing and recruiting, the nuts and bolts of it is not really hard. I would say the payroll and time gets complex sometimes, but the actual business itself is pretty straightforward. These systems, especially as we get into AI and automation and agents and all that stuff, they're very complex. So making sure that you have that right person in your corner to guarantee your success, particularly if you're the stakeholder who's driving that, right? You've got the business alignment, you got the requirements. You don't want it to fail as you go to those final stages to implement it. So I just think it's super important that you have the right team riding along with you and to ensure your success.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. And kind of to bring us home here, if there is one takeaway for staffing firms considering ATS implementation, it's to treat your ATS implementation as a strategic business initiative, not just a technology switch, right? The right approach means the difference between a game-changing new system, operations, a smooth process, and ultimately sooner ROI versus costly mistakes that involve rework and frustration and team burnout and headaches and all those kinds of things. So
and I would just say to that, Chanel, is like, don't be afraid to reach out. Like there's lots of partners out there. We're obviously available here at PARQA. But reach out and ask questions, like have conversations. It doesn't cost you anything to talk to folks and just dig around a little bit, check references from previous implementations and things like that. Make sure that you're getting all the information that you need because it is out there. There's people out there that will help, and it's super important.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining us today on Learn with PARQA. If you're considering, like Travis said, an ATS implementation or technology optimization of any kind, and you want to ensure a smooth rollout, reach out. We'd love to help. Connect with us on LinkedIn or find us on the website, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again.